Welcome, learners. I am here today to talk about communication skills. We need to understand what communication is all about and how can we make communication more effective and more fruitful. Now, what is important is we need to understand what are the fundamentals, or I should say, what are the primary characteristics which we should pay attention to or which we should keep in mind while understanding communication. Communication, now as we proceed ahead, we need to understand why do we need to communicate and what exactly is the purpose of communication. We need to communicate because we need to transform information. We also need to communicate because we want to convey our ideas to the people which we are surrounded with. We also need to communicate because we need to transfer facts and information. Now, what we are trying to understand is why and how can this communication be made more effective and more fruitful. Before we begin, I just want to read out a few lines which talk about the skill of communication. It says, one good skill to know is the art of good communication. It's exchanging one's thoughts and ideas, and it results in clarification. We'll need to listen closely and look at the one who speaks. You might miss something important, and catching up might take weeks. We'll need to speak clearly and use a proper tone. You might need to speak up, or you might be on the phone. If you watch and observe closely, you'll pick up on non-verbal clues. You'll soon begin to understand and respect others' point of view. So if you want some good advice, then you should take it from me. When you have good communication, in the dark, you'll no longer be. So what I'm trying to say is, as the poem suggests, communication in itself is an art, and we need to excel in this art to master our society, to be a master in communication, to be a master in expressing our thoughts and emotions. Now today, we are trying to understand what communication is all about, what are the various skills of communication that are important and that we need to understand. We are also going to talk about the various important characteristic features of communication that are normally known as the 7 C's of communication. Then there are certain barriers which influence communication. So the process of communication is influenced by these barriers. So how do we, overcome these influences, or how do we overcome these barriers is also that we are going to discuss today. I am also going to talk about certain cross-cultural factors or the impact or the importance of these cross-cultural conventions, and why do we need to be aware of these various socio-cultural issues while we are communicating in a social group. There are certain non-verbal clues also which we need to keep in mind while we indulge in the process of communication. So to begin with, we all understand that communication is precisely very, very important, and to indulge in any kind of communication, we also need to understand the importance of good communication and the various skills and the tools. We also need to understand that this communication varies according to the situation. Now, how your communication skills need to address these situations, and also how the process of communication is to be inculcated in such a manner that we do not, get indulged in those barriers of communication? How do we overcome these barriers of communication, and how do we tackle these challenges? I am also going to talk about the importance of cross-cultural understanding while we are communicating in a multilingual and multicultural space. Now, communication, as is defined, is the human connection. It is the key to personal and career success. So, it is the connecting line between the human beings. If you need to convey your ideas, if you need to convey your emotions, it is only through communication. Now, I would like to talk about Ellen Lewis, who defines communication as the sum of all three things. Now, there are three important factors that are involved in any communication. First, the person, somebody, when he wants to create an understanding, what does he do? Now, he wants to create an understanding, which means he is the sender. He wants to create this understanding in the mind of another person. Now, the entire process involves a systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. So now there are three important events that take place in any process of communication. One is telling, the other is listening, and the third one, which is most important, is understanding. So in the process of communication, the utmost importance lies on the sender, because the sender is at the giving end. And there is the receiver who is at the receiving end, who is the target audience. Now, if I, for example, want to convey a message, say to my viewers, I have to encode that message in a language which is suitable to be comprehended by the listener. Now, how do I do? So, the entire onus lies on somebody who is speaking, somebody who is writing. See, communication skills can also be about writing. It can also be about speaking or talking. So when I want to communicate a message, I have to encode the message in such a manner that my listener or my reader who is at the receiving end can easily and very happily decode the message without any misunderstanding. So the message has to be encoded in such a manner that there is an ease of decoding the message. Now, when we are encoding the message, we have to keep certain factors in mind, because the message is going to be, decoded at the other end by the target audience, by the reader, by the listener. So there are certain things that we need to keep in mind, and the most important thing that we need to keep in mind is the social background of the listener, the social background of the reader, because his bent of mind, his social and political and cultural environment influence his understanding of the message. If I want my message to be decoded without any misunderstandings, I have to encode it in such a manner that it can easily be decoded. Now, this is what communication is all about, and the entire skill in understanding communication, the entire onus lies here. It lies on you as somebody who is, encoding the message. Now, when we talk about, it also talks about the ability of one person to make contact with the other person, and also to make him or herself understood easily. So you have to be, correctly comprehended. There has to be no misunderstanding, and the challenge is, how do you, encode the message? So the process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. So, you're trying to bridge the meaning between two people. You're enabling them to safely travel through the sea of misunderstandings. this is what is communication is all about. So as I have been stating, we have the sender who is, full of information, or you can say who is the source of information. He is somebody who is going to, encode the message, which is decoded by the receiver, and the message is transmitted through a medium. Now, the medium also plays an important role, and the reason is because, see, what happens is, maybe I, probably as the head of, say, a group of people, encode a message. Now, this message is decoded by somebody who is immediately junior to me, and then it has again, decoded at a later stage by somebody much more junior. So the message should not be misunderstood. It should stay the same, its integrity should not be changed while it travels through different mediums, is something that is very, very important. So the sender encodes the message, and he keeps in mind certain few things. First, the rules of the language that is being used. He also has to keep in mind the capacity of the receiver. He also has to keep in mind the nature of the medium through which the message is being sent, and the protocol of the space where this communication is being attempted is also important, because we have to keep in mind all these things. Now, if you do not follow the rules of the language, somebody who is, decoding the message will not be able to decode it successfully. So, the comprehension part, when we are comprehending the message, the entire content is lost or it is misinterpreted. Similarly, we also need to keep in mind the protocol of the space where this message is being communicated, where the transmission is being taking place. Now, if I as a teacher is trying to, communicate certain things, or probably a theory to my students, now see what happens is I, as a student, must have read those theories, and now when I am trying to transmit those theories to my students, I am encoding those theories, and which will be later decoded by my students. So the onus lies on me. The entire responsibility lies on me. How do I decode the message? So the process of decoding is of great importance. Now, the receiver is somebody who decodes the message, because he also will follow the rules of the language. What happens is, now see, this is a very important slide which I would like all of you to pay attention to. The process of communication, it does not end only by the sender sending the message and receiver receiving the message. It also takes place when the sender gives the feedback, the receiver gives the feedback and the sender receives the feedback. So the receiver decodes the message and gives a feedback to the sender. So when the entire process is correct, or when the entire interpretation is correct, then we say that the process of communication is complete or it is fulfilled. Now, there are certain functions of communication that we all well understand. Just a few mentioned that, any communication has various functions and we need to pay attention to those functions. The most important is the emotive function, because, while you're talking, you're also communicating the inner state of emotions. For example, at times we say, oh no, oh yes, alas. So these are various expressions which fulfill the emotive function of communication. And we have to keep in mind, because, communication is not only about, I would say, talking, because your body language, your gestures, your actions, your expressions all play important roles while you are communicating. So the most important function of communication is emotive function. Another function that we need to understand is the directive function, which means, you are kind of giving some kind of direction. You are seeking to probably initiate action. You are affecting the behavior of others. For example, close the door, please, or may I have a glass of water, please. So these kind of communication, this feature of communication is fulfilled when we say it is a directive function. There is, another function which talks about communication or fulfilled by communication. It is probably, I would say, the poetic function, which says, you are you choose a particular form which talks about the essence of the message. Now, you're not interested in conveying the word or the factual word which you are using. Probably you are trying to convey the essence of meaning, and this function normally refers to the aesthetic function of language. There is the referential function which carry forwards the information, so you are kind of giving references. Another important function of communication skills is meta-linguistic function, which, where you can say the use of both. There are times when we use both will and shall. Now, it is correct in the modern usage. So this is meta-linguistic function, which focuses attention on the code itself. And then we can talk about the contextual function, which is, when you are talking about a particular context, when you are creating awareness about a particular context, then we say communication fulfills a contextual function. So, for example, we say, let's start the meeting, things like that. So we need to understand that what kind of communication are we indulging in to make our communication more effective, because the entire onus of making this communication effective, interesting, and result-oriented lies on you, because you are somebody who is encoding the message. We all understand that communication involves, as I've been telling you earlier, it involves listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But it also involves the non-verbal aspect. So the non-verbal communication is also important, which talks about, the gestures, your way of communicating, your facial expression, and so many other things. We also need to be, empathizing, because that again is one of the important characteristic feature of communication. You need to empathize with the situation or the mindset or the socio-cultural background of the listener, because apart from following the rules of the language in which you are communicating, you also need to understand the social implications or the socio-cultural background of somebody who is going to be at the receiving end. Now, the listener probably would interpret your communication or your message with reference to his surrounding, with reference to his understanding of the cultural context. For example, if you're talking about something which is very popular or something which is very well understood in Indian context, it is not important that somebody from a different land can easily interpret the meaning, can easily interpret and understand the context. So the most important thing while communicating is the need to keep in mind the context and the socio-cultural environment of the receiver. Here, it is the listener or probably somebody who's going to read what you're communicating. Now, speaking or, communication is all about how we speak and what we speak. We also need to emphasize on the non-verbal aspects of communication. As I've been telling you, like you're gazing at somebody, or probably when you're communicating a fact, you have to make an eye contact, your hand gestures, your facial expressions, your body postures, and so many other things. It also involves your temperament to tackle the cross-cultural differences. Now, this is very, very important. While communicating, you have to keep in mind the cross-cultural differences, because you probably are communicating in a heterogeneous society or a heterogeneous space. So the cross-cultural differences and the cross-cultural understanding of the context is equally important. Now, you also need to understand how people who belong to diverse backgrounds or who communicate with a certain level of clarity, you cannot afford to be judgmental to them. You have to keep a very objective approach towards any kind of communication. Now, we've understood what communication is all about and how can we maintain a certain kind of effectiveness, or how do we make a communication fruitful and effective, and it has to have a certain kind of impression and clarity, and then because that is the only way how you're going to make your listener convinced with the idea. So it also has to be convincing, apart from being bringing some apart from being effective, it also has to be convincing. Now, something very important, which is generally known as the principles of effective communication, I would like to focus and to begin with, the most important aspect of any communication is that there has to be clarity. So the communication that you are indulging must be very, very clear. So the message that you are going to communicate, it needs to be clear, because it needs to be effectively understood by the listener, and then naturally it is going to be followed by relevant feedback, and this is how the process of communication becomes successful. Now, I would like to focus on certain important language-related factors that speakers need to be careful about. So as to preserve clarity, you need to focus on your choice of vocabulary. So you need to be, to maintain clarity, you have to keep it as simple as possible without assuming anything about the competence of the receiver. So because what happens is the vocabulary levels vary, in multicultural spaces. There are individuals belonging to different backgrounds, different socio-cultural backgrounds, and the competence varies. So we need to keep in mind the use and the choice of vocabulary. We also need to keep in mind that we do not create or cause ambiguity, because the message must be free from both the structural and the semantic ambiguity. We need to, avoid using heavy jargons, because what happens is, it kind of, we kind of use them to improve our understanding or comprehensibility, but the reverse happens. So we need to focus on the choice of vocabulary, on not being ambiguous, and also use simple and direct choice of words. Another important thing that we need to keep in mind is, we need to be concise. So the idea behind this is that the message that we are going to convey must be precise, without any unnecessary details. We do not, the primary purpose is that we need to convey the idea without wasting the time of the listener. Another important thing that we need, and so I would say that we need to be, exercise economy of expression. We also, for example, I would say, like there are times when we say, in view of the fact that, so might as well use a direct word, say, considering, in opinion of, in somebody's opinion, might as well directly say, so and so believes. So we have to avoid cluttering phrases and rather use economic alternatives in the context of effective communication. We also need to be, concise, because we purposely should make use of, direct sentences and not roundabout sentences. Because, for example, if I say, rather than saying that this report has been prepared with the object of recommending certain retailers for the purpose of expanding business, this should be avoided. Rather, you should be using, this report recommends certain retailers to expand business. So these are the various examples wherein we can maintain conciseness. Another important feature that we need to focus on is concreteness. So the idea conveyed must be specific, and it should provide the listener a very straightforward image of the message that you intend to convey. So the message conveyed should also be direct and concrete. Another important skill is that we need to pay attention on is correctness. So the idea that we are trying to convey must also be correct. It should be free from any grammatical mistakes or the errors of punctuation. It should rather be more direct and more correct. So we've been talking about the correctness. Courtesy is again an important feature that we should, the desirable level of courtesy should also be maintained, because while we are using words or expressions and tones, the message that we are communicating must maintain certain level of courtesy. For example, we say your order cannot be delivered in 3 days. Rather, you should use, we will do our best to deliver your order within the stipulated time. So, apart from maintaining courtesy, another important thing is that the idea that we are conveying should be complete in itself. So, completeness is also an important feature that we need to focus on. And the last but not the least is consideration. So, the message that we are trying to convey must also keep in mind the recipient's profile, which means the background, the cultural sensibilities, the preferences. So these are various things that we need to consider. We need to avoid statements that are, complicated and that kind of hurt the sensibility of the listener. So what we have been talking about is how do we make our communication more effective, more influential, something which kind of, brings about a positive feedback or a positive response from the listener. Now, if we succeed in making this process of communication successful, then only we can say, because if we get a positive feedback, then the process of communication is complete. So to make it effective and to make it fruitful and to make it more and more comprehensible, we need to focus on certain aspects which definitely involve the clarity and conciseness. We need to be direct, avoid using unnecessary jargons. We need to also focus on the completeness of the idea. So these are various things that I've been telling you, dear learners, about the idea of communication skills. There's much to be talked about. There are certain things that we also need to talk about. How do we overcome the barriers that hinder the completeness of the process of communication, which definitely will be continued in different sessions to follow. I think I've been able to convince and convey the idea and make you understand what communication is all about and what are the various characteristics and the features that we need to pay attention to while we indulge in the process of communication. Thanks for today.
Hello, learners. I welcome you all to this teleconferencing session on Mineral Resources of India. And for our BSc General program with Geography, we have a course on Geography of India and we have another course on Economic Geography. Both of these courses are discipline based electives, and the codes are BGG-CT 141 and BGG-ET 141 and BGG-ET 142. And the current topic which I am discussing today, Mineral Resources of India, are pertaining to both these courses. So before we start our discussion on Mineral Resources of India, let us get acquainted with mineral resources and the different types of mineral resources, the characteristics of mineral resources, and the classification of mineral resources as per UNFC. And then we'll come on to Mineral Resources of India, and we'll discuss the different types of mining methods, and then lastly the conservation aspects of mineral resources, which are basically non-renewable resources. So after viewing this program, you should be able to define minerals, explain the characteristics of minerals, classify minerals and distinguish between them, describe the distribution of minerals of India and correlate it with the different geological structures, analyze the various methods of extraction and utilization of these mineral resources, and assess the existing conservation measures as well as give possible options for future conservation of these valuable non-renewable resources. So you must have studied about minerals at your school level. So you can define minerals, you can recap that what are minerals, how do we define minerals. So minerals are basically naturally occurring substances with a fixed chemical composition and recognizable physical properties. They are very important in our lives because right from early in the morning when we get up, we brush our teeth with our paste we use is made of minerals. The cosmetics we use are made up of minerals. Then the gemstones we wear, the food we eat, the house we live in, the automobiles we drive are all made up of variety of minerals. Even the cell phones we use are also made up of minerals, and our entire body is made up of minerals. So you can see minerals are penetrating into our lives so much we are involved with the minerals. So it is important to know what are these minerals, what are the basic properties of these minerals. So first one is the that minerals are naturally occurring substances, meaning to say they are not created by human beings in a laboratory, and some substances which are created in lab may resemble minerals but they are not. And while some naturally occurring substances may also be not be minerals, but minerals in general are naturally occurring and they are inorganic, that is they are not made up of any living organisms, and they may have carbon content in them, but the carbon content in them is not making bonds with hydrogen in long chains. So just like protein, fat, carbohydrate, so they are not having such type of structures, carbon hydrogen structures, so they are inorganic. Now another property of mineral is that they are solid at standard temperature and pressure. That is, the atoms are bonded together in a tight or rigid structure which provides the crystalline structure or shape to the minerals. The crystalline structure is another basic characteristic of mineral, in which the atoms are arranged in a systematic and repeating pattern. Most of the crystalline structures are of minerals are in the form of cubical or tetrahedral shape, although there are 6 types of crystalline shapes, but these two are very common amongst the minerals. And this crystalline structure is formed under intense heat and pressure. You must have, being a student of geography, you must have studied that the most of the precious metals are formed in the volcanic vents under intense heat and pressure. Like diamonds are found in volcanic vents, and this gives their crystalline shape. And another important property of mineral is that they are having a definite chemical composition. That is, the atoms, it consists of a fixed combination of atoms which are bonded together in a crystalline shape. Like in this figure, you can see that in a halide, how sodium and chlorine ions are arranged in a crystalline shape. That is, they are having a definite chemical composition, Na plus and Cl minus ions, and they are arranged in a repeating pattern like this. And you can see the overall structure of crystal is in the form of a cube. So in this way, other minerals are also arranged in a crystalline structure and have a definite chemical composition. Now, how do we classify these mineral resources? Now, it's very easy, nothing to mug up. Minerals are divided into metallic minerals and non-metallic minerals. Now, metallic minerals, as the name suggests, they have metal content in it, and the non-metallic minerals don't have metal content in it. Again, the metallic minerals are divided into ferrous and non-ferrous. Now, ferrous means having the iron content. So those minerals, metallic minerals, which are having iron content in them are called ferrous minerals. And examples are iron, tungsten, manganese, nickel, etc. And the non-ferrous metallic minerals are those which don't have iron content in them. Like some of the important non-ferrous metallic minerals are copper and bauxite. Now, what are non-metals? Non-metallic minerals, those which do not have metal content in them. They are again divided into two types. One is the organic or fuel minerals like coal, petroleum, natural gas. These are the minerals which are derived from organic remains of plants and animals. And non-metallic inorganic minerals are those which do not contain organic matter in them. So you know the classification and the definition of all these different types is very easy, and just by reading the names you can identify their characteristics. Now, from economic point of view also, we have different types of minerals. We can divide minerals into precious and semi-precious minerals like diamond, gold, garnet, etc. Strategic minerals like cobalt, molybdenum, nickel. Fertilizer minerals like rock, phosphate, potash, sulfur. Refractory minerals like andalusite, graphite, kyanite, etc. Ceramic and glass minerals like wollastonite, and other industrial minerals like asbestos, calcite, chalk, china clay, etc. Now, while I am talking about minerals, you might be familiar with this term also, ore. Like mineral ore, you must have heard about mineral ores. So, what are these ores? Yes, you know very well that ores are concentration of minerals in rocks that are high enough to be economically extracted for the use. So, minerals are not found in isolation, they are in the form of ores in rocks, and from their percentage their percentage is so high that we can economically extract those minerals from those rocks or ores. Now, in this figure, you can see that United Nations framework on classification of fossil and mineral resources also follows a three-dimensional system of classification based on these three axes. One is the economic axis, the second is the feasibility axis, and the third is the geological axis. Now, based on these three axes, they generate a 3-digit code like this 111, 121, 122, and so on, like 334. Now, let me explain this. Economic access follows 3-digit code like 1, 2, 3, and code 1 is related to those resources which are economically viable. I mean, the extraction or mining of those resources are economically viable. Now, second, the code number 2 in case of economic viability relates to those minerals which may turn into viable economic resources when some conditions are given or something is done, and then they become economically viable. And the third code is related to those resources which are remaining resources. That means they are not economically viable at present, but in future they might become viable after some conditions are fulfilled or some exploration work or other things are done. Now, the second axis is related to the feasibility axis. It is also given codes 3, 2, 1 based on similar grounds. And then the third axis is the geological axis. It is having 4 codes 1, 2, 3, and 4. One is related to detailed exploration already done. Second is related to relatively less explored part, and the third is in the form of exploring resources, and the fourth is those resources in which just reconnaissance survey has been done and lot more is needed to be done. So in terms of UNFC classification, if the code is given 111 based on these 3 axes, then it is the highest order or the highest category of resources, and the code 334 is the lowest order of resources or the lowest category of the resources. So by now you must have understood that UNFC how it classifies the resources or mineral reserves of the country. Like in the booklet also you'll see, or even if you study the India yearbook, you'll see that in any resource or mineral reserves, it is written that total mineral resources is equal to reserves plus additional or remaining resources. So I've just now explained what are the additional or remaining resources which are less economically viable, and in course of time they might become reserves, or they might be economically viable. Now coming on to mineral resources of India. India is richly endowed with a wide variety of mineral resources, and it produces 95 minerals which include 4 fuel, metallic, 10 metallic, 23 non-metallic, and 3 atomic, and 5 minor minerals. In this session, we are not dealing with the fuel or energy resources. We have a separate unit related to energy resources. So in this unit or in this teleconferencing session, we will be dealing only with the ferrous and non-ferrous metallic minerals and the inorganic non-metallic minerals. Now in this table you can see the contribution and rank of India in the world production of principal minerals and metals. Like you can see bauxite. In terms of bauxite, India has 5th rank in the world order. Now in terms of chromite, it is 4th largest producer. Iron ore, 4th largest producer. Manganese ore, 7th largest producer. Then other important metals like aluminium, also it is 4th largest. Copper, it is 11th. Steel, I mean crude or liquid steel, it is 2nd largest producer. Lead, it is 4th, and zinc slab, it is the third largest, and the figures are related to 2018-19. Now, what are the geomorphological divisions of India and how where minerals are mostly found? You must understand that geomorphologically, India is divided into 3 parts, like the peninsular part and the extra peninsular part, and which are the Himalayas and the Naga-Lushai belt, and the Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra aluminum. I'm also including deserts in this. So this last one, that is Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra alluvium, including the deserts, are quaternary formations, and these are not very famous for mineral resources. These are fertile land, agricultural land, and extra peninsular regions are having mineral oils, or they are having some important minerals, but due to mountainous terrain it is difficult in extracting the minerals from Himalayas. Now this peninsular India is the most important one so far as minerals are concerned, because they host a variety of minerals, both metallic, non-metallic, ferrous, non-ferrous, and all the minerals here are related to Archean Proterozoic formations. So this is the most popular region, or the mineral belt are located mostly in the peninsular India. Now, what are the 3 or 4 important mineral belts of India? The first one is the northeastern plateau region. It consists of Chota Nagpur plateau and adjoining areas of Orissa, Chhattisgarh, all the plateau parts, and these are rich in reserves of coal, iron ore, and manganese, bauxite, mostly metallic minerals, and also mica, which is a non-metallic inorganic mineral. Now, another region is the southwestern part, which includes Karnataka, Goa, and this region is rich in monazite, thorium. Kerala and the upland areas of Tamil Nadu are also related to this region. And Goa has good iron ore deposits, and lignite deposits are found in Neyveli. I'll show all these regions with the help of map also in my next slide. Now, northwestern region engulfs the Aravalli region of Rajasthan and Gujarat, and these are mostly famous for minerals which are used in construction industry, like granite, limestone, marble, dolomite, etc. Rock salt is also found here. Now, the fourth region is the Himalaya region, which is rich in copper, lead, zinc, cobalt, tungsten. This region also has mineral oil deposits along Assam Valley, and as I told you, it's not very famous for minerals, because compared to the plateau or the peninsular India, because extraction of minerals is difficult in the mountainous terrain. However, mineral oils are extracted from this region. Now, this is the mineral belt of peninsular India. This is the northeastern plateau region, which I have just now explained, the Chota Nagpur and adjoining areas of Orissa and Chhattisgarh. And this is the northwestern part, which is dealing with the Aravalli region of Rajasthan and Gujarat, and mostly minerals which are used in construction industry are found over here. And this is the southwestern plateau area, which engulfs the region of Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, and uplands of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So you can also modify this figure as per your question, whatever questions. If you draw figures also in questions, like it will help you fetch good marks. So questions can come like spatial pattern of distribution of minerals in India, and then show with the help of a diagram. Then you can make a rough sketch of India, and you can just locate all these regions and in a map and explain them. Now, let us study the distribution and utilization of some of the major minerals found in India. And first we start with the metallic and ferrous minerals. So iron, there are 2 types of deposits of iron ore deposits, like hematite and magnetite. And when you discuss about minerals, you should focus on 3 things, like these deposits are associated with which rock formation, or what are the areas which are leading producers of particular metal, and what are the important mines. Like iron ore is related to these mines, and these are very famous mines areas related to iron ore mining. So Noah Mundi, Goa, Manoharpur, Solaipur, Belladeda, Dhali Rajhara Hills, all these mines are important, and you should remember those. And you, in exams or in competitive exams also, you might get maps related to these mines, and you'll be asked just to locate the mines or identify the mineral resources which are related to these mines. So it is important for you to remember these mines and the location of these resources in any mineral. Like in manganese also, Orissa tops the list with 44% of the total reserves of manganese, and Madhya Pradesh continued to be the largest producer of manganese, contributing 32.99% of the total output of the country. Now these are important areas like Dharwad, Ballari, Belagavi, North Kanara, Chikmagaluru, Shiva, Moga, Chitradurg, and Tumakuru. These are important areas producing manganese ore. And since manganese is used in the smelting of iron, and it is also used in ferroalloys, it is very important mineral, and it is also a constituent of paint and glass industries. It is used in dry cell batteries. So while studying minerals, you should remember the utilization part or the importance of minerals also. Now these are other important ferro minerals like nickel, chromite, tungsten. All are used, most of the nickel and chromite are used in making the iron stainless. They are also used in heating units, ovens, and chrome plating. And tungsten, you must have studied about this, that they are capable of tolerating high temperatures. So they are used in light bulb filaments and heating elements in high temperature furnaces, and they are alloyed with other metals to provide additional strength. Now in this figure you can see the distribution of metallic minerals. All the mines which I have just now told you, like in case you see, these are the iron ore mines shown by this diamond shaped symbol, and these are Belladela, Kyonjhar, Mayurbhanj, and Kundremukh iron ore mines, Chitradurg, all these, Chikmagalur, Chitradurg, all these are important iron ore mines, and just remember where they are located. And the shaded grey parts are the iron ore fields, and the points are shown as mines. Now manganese mines are also located over here, like Balaghat, Nagpur, and Bhandara. These are important manganese mining areas, and it is also mined at Goa and some places over here. Kyunjhar also has manganese reserves. So in this way you should be able to identify the mines and important iron ore fields or other mineral fields also. So with the help of map you can identify them. And if you, in questions and answers also, if you give a rough sketch of these mineral resources, their distribution pattern, then it will help you fetch good marks. Now coming on to non-ferrous metallic minerals, bauxite and copper are most important of them, and they are associated with bauxite is associated with lateritic rocks belonging to tertiary formations, and these are the important places like Kalahandi, Sambalpur, Bolangir, Koratpur, Lohardagga, Bhavnagar, Amarkantak Plateau, Katni, Jabalpur area, Balaghat, Kolaba, Thane, Ratnagiri, Satara, Pune, and Kolhapur. And Orissa with 70.95 contribution tops the list in the production, followed by Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. In the exams, questions can also come in the form of MCQs, like ranking of the states in terms of production. And bauxite is the ore, and since it is used in the production of aluminium, and aluminium is lightweight, so it is used in the making of aeroplanes and other automobile engines. Now, before we proceed with other non-ferrous metallic minerals, their distribution and utilization, let us take a short break and come back after that.
आसाम की विशालता केवल ब्रह्मपुत्र नदी तक सीमित नहीं है, बल्कि यहाँ के सांस्कृतिक वातावरण में भी दिखाई देती है।
यही वह कामरूप है जिसकी गाथा पौराणिक कहानियों में भी पाई जाती है।
मैं कामरूप हूँ, मैं साक्षी हूँ उस पौराणिक काल का। प्रभु महादेव की करुणा से मुझ में ही कामदेव को नया जीवन मिला, इसलिए मैं कामरूप हूँ।
ऐसी ही एक पौराणिक गाथा जुड़ी है आसाम के गुवाहाटी में स्थित मां कामाख्या देवी के मंदिर के साथ।
प्रतिदिन यहाँ हजारों की संख्या में श्रद्धालु भक्त मां कामाख्या के दर्शनों को प्राप्त करने के लिए समस्त संसार भर से यहाँ पर आते हैं।
जिस पहाड़ी पर मां कामाख्या का मंदिर स्थित है उसे नीलांचल पहाड़ कहते हैं। वर्तमान में मंदिर तक पहुंचने के लिए अति उत्तम मार्ग की व्यवस्था है।
परंतु एक समय ऐसा भी था जब लोगों को पत्थरों की सीढ़ियों पर चढ़कर वहां तक पहुंचना पड़ता था।
भक्ति के साथ साथ यह एक पर्यटन स्थल भी है। यहाँ के स्थानीय निवासी इसी पर्यटन से अपनी आजीविका भी चलाते हैं। हर वर्ष आषाढ़ माह में मंदिर के द्वार कुछ समय बंद रखने की परंपरा है, जिसे अम्बुवासी कहते हैं। अम्बुवासी के दौरान देश भर से लाखों भक्तजन यहाँ पर आकर रात बिताते हैं।
मंदिर खुलते ही भक्तजन मां कामाख्या के दर्शन कर लेते हैं। अम्बुवासी प्रवृत्ति के समय यहाँ अत्यंत भव्य मेला लगता है। भक्तों की ऐसी ही भीड़ नवरात्रि में भी दिखाई देती है।
Welcome back, learners. In the previous session, we started with mineral resources of India, and we had a brief introduction with minerals, and then we studied the different characteristics of minerals. We learned the classification of minerals and based on their physical and chemical properties, and we also studied about UNFC classification of minerals, and then we studied the distribution of some of the major metallic, I mean the ferrous minerals like iron ore and manganese and chromite, nickel, tungsten. And now we have also studied about the bauxite, which is a non-ferrous metallic mineral. We have studied the distribution and utilization of bauxite, and now we'll continue further with other minerals, their distribution and utilization, and then we'll study the different mining techniques or different types of or mining methods. And so after bauxite, another important non-ferrous metallic mineral is copper. Since copper is a good conductor of electricity, it is ductile, so it is used very extensively in electrical industry. And some of the important districts are in the leading the production of copper are Simbhum district in Jharkhand, Balaghat district in Madhya Pradesh, Jhunjhunu and Alwar districts in Rajasthan, Agni Gundala in Guntur district, Andhra Pradesh, Chitradurga and Hassan districts in Karnataka, and South Arcot district, Tamil Nadu. So another important non-ferrous metallic minerals are lead and zinc, and the leading producers are Rajasthan, Bihar, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, West Bengal, Odisha, Sikkim, Tamil Nadu and Meghalaya. Rajasthan is endowed with the largest reserves of lead and zinc, followed by Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar and Maharashtra. And since lead is used in storage batteries, it is very important. It has an important property, that is it resists corrosion, and so it is used to galvanize ice sheets to make it more durable, and it is used in die casting and dry cell batteries. Now gold is also a very important non-ferrous metallic mineral, and once we hear the name gold, one thing comes into our mind, that it is used in jewelry because of its very high luster, and it's so attractive, so it is used in jewelry and ornaments. But it is also having high electrical conductivity, due to which it is used in electric and electronic industry for plating contacts and terminals, printed circuits and semiconductor systems also. Largest reserves of gold ore primary are located in Bihar, which is 44% of the country's total, followed by Rajasthan, Karnataka, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Madhya Pradesh. But still Karnataka is the leading producer of gold in India. Now these are the distribution of non-ferrous metallic minerals. We have given two examples, bauxite and copper, which is very important. And you can see that copper is found in Khetri mines, Alwar, Bhilwara, Udaipur areas of Rajasthan. And then in Hazari Bagh and Simbhum district of Jharkhand also it is found. And bauxite is found in Katni, Amarkantak, Maikala Hill, Bilaspur, Koratpur. So you have to again learn the distribution pattern in the with the help of map also, because as I have told you, these help you in fetching good marks in exams. If you are answering some long questions, then you can show with a rough sketch the distribution of these minerals in a map of India. Now coming on to non-metallic minerals, mica is very important because it is a bad conductor of electricity, so it is used in electrical appliances as an insulating material. It is also used in making mica bricks, mica nite, and it is used in paint and rubber goods. And mica occurs in veins of metamorphic rocks, particularly mica cysts. These are associated with mica deposits. And Andhra Pradesh leads with 40% of the country's resources, followed by Rajasthan, accounting to about 28% of resources, Orissa, Maharashtra, and Bihar. Now another important building mineral is gypsum, which is used in cement industry, and so it is used for building purposes, and also used in the manufacture of plaster and Paris. It is associated with lacustrine deposits, or you can say salt lake deposits of Rajasthan, and Rajasthan alone accounts for 81% of the total resources in India. Now coming on to limestone, dolomite, and other materials which are used in construction industry. In case of limestone, Karnataka is the leading state, having 27% of the country's resource, followed by Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Meghalaya, Telangana, Chhattisgarh. And these are all, as I told you, that these are used in building and construction industry, and since it is a good source of calcium, it is also used as a food additive in the production of glass and plastic production, and it is used in the manufacturing of steel and water treatment plants and purification and its purification. Now dolomite is also used in cement and construction industry. It is being a good source of calcium. It is used as a livestock feed, and it is an ingredient for glass, bricks, and ceramics. And Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Karnataka, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Maharashtra are the important producing states of this mineral. Now we come to diamond. Once we hear the name of diamond, again one thing comes into our mind, that it is used in making jewelry, ornaments. So there is another important property of diamond, that is it is very hard. So diamond tipped tools are used in cutting and drilling, polishing, and nowadays diamond facial is also used for exfoliating the skin for facial purposes, and they are also helpful in removal of wrinkles from the skin. And diamond deposits are associated with three types of formations, like they are associated with kimberlite pipes, conglomerate belts, beds, and alluvial gravels. And in India, Panna belt in Madhya Pradesh is the leading producer of diamond, and Krishna gravels in Andhra Pradesh are also good in diamond reserves, and in Raipur district of Chhattisgarh also diamond is mined. Now in this figure you can see the distribution of some of the non-metallic minerals in India. You can see that mica is found around this Giridih region, and mica is also mined at some places in Rajasthan, and then limestone and other dolomite, gypsum are abundantly found in Rajasthan area, and limestone is also found in this Karnataka area, and adjoining area plateau areas of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and in central MP also they are found. And here also you can find in the northeast also they are having some limestone deposits around Meghalaya and Assam region. Now, after we studied, we have just now completed the distribution and utilization of metallic minerals and non-metallic minerals in India. And now let us study the different mining methods, how minerals are extracted. And there are four main methods of mining. One is the surface mining, second one is the underground mining, third is the placer mining, and fourth is in situ mining. Now, surface mining, you can very well understand that mining is done at the surface. It is not under the ground, it is at the surface. And this type of mining is done for those minerals which are shallow, and it is also less expensive because it is mined at the surface, so no more digging and making tunnels are required in this. And surface mining is also of two types. One is open pit mining and one is strip mining. Now in this figure you can see open pit mining. This is a figure of an open pit mining. You can see that the side walls are terraced in this case, because there is a danger of collapsing of the side walls in case of open pit mining. So terraces are made along the side walls so that they do not collapse. And this type of mining is also having flooding problem, because water can enter the mine anytime due to heavy rains or overflowing of river banks, nearby river banks, etc. So proper water management technique is required in this type of mining, so that minerals are extracted economically with good consequences. And another type of mining is strip mining, in which stripping of surface layers is done to reveal the ore seams below. This is also a form of surface mining, and in this figure you can see this is the form. Stripping of surface is done over here to reveal the mineral layer, and this is a case of strip mining, which is again a surface mining. Now another type of mining is underground mining, in which as the name suggests, underground mining means that it is subsurface mining. That means the minerals are located under the ground, and mining is done under the ground to extract the minerals. And it requires the use of tunnels and shafts to reach the mineral. So it is also expensive form of mining. And some of the minerals extracted due to underground due to this method of underground mining are gold, silver, etc. And there are two types of again underground mining based on the direction of this tunnels. If the tunnels are horizontal, then it is called drift mining, and if the tunnels are diagonal, diagonal is done, diagonal shafts are made in case of slope mining. So it is called slope mining when the shafts or tunnels are diagonal. And the depth of the mines can range from 300 meters to 3 kilometers. In this figure you see this is an example of underground mine shaft. This is a shaft, and it is under the ground. So this is an example of underground mining. Now placer mining is another type of mining which is done for extracting placers. Placers are found as sediments in river channels, beach sands, or where there is natural accumulation of sediments. And platinum, tin, diamonds are extracted in this way. 50% of the world's titanium comes through placer mining. And after the minerals are extracted or the sediments are extracted, they are rinsed and sluiced to pull out the desired minerals. Now in this figure you can see that placers are sedimented and the minerals are extracted in this case. Now, in situ mining is also called solution mining. It involves pumping of chemicals under the ground to dissolve the resource containing the ore, and it does not require the moving of rock from the ground, because the chemicals are pumped inside the ground and the minerals are dissolved, and then the minerals are pumped up back to the surface, where where they are processed, and then extraction of mineral is done in this way. You can see in this figure, you see this is a case of in situ mining, where chemicals are pumped through these machines, and it goes down and dissolves the minerals, and so minerals are extracted, and then processing is done to extract the minerals economically. Now, this is very important mining, because it doesn't involve the removal of rocks as in case of surface mining or underground mining. In case of surface mining, you see lot of vegetation is destroyed also, and upper layer of rock is destroyed. So it creates a lot of waste compared to in situ mining. Now, since extraction of minerals are creating so much of environmental problems, so conservation aspects of minerals are also important, and so much of rock waste is produced in mining that now our new mineral policy, National Mineral Policy 2019, advocates the zero waste mining, and so it promotes the mining in where lot of waste are not generated, and we are aiming at zero waste mining. And in some cases recycling of metals is also done, or the use of scrap metals. For example, in copper industry, scrap metals are used, and recycling of metals is done to prevent extra mining of minerals. Then we also use alternatives and renewable substitutes, and to protect our mineral resources, because mineral resources are non-renewable. So once we extract the minerals, we keep extracting, then all our the reserves would be depleted. So in this way, extracting of alternatives are important, renewable substitutes are important. Now, export of strategic and scarce minerals should also be reduced to prevent the depletion of important mineral resources. And mining shall be undertaken within the parameters of comprehensive sustainable development framework. And protecting the forest environment ecology is important to conserve the biodiversity and of the mining areas. So in this video program, we have studied about mineral resources. So let's have a quick recap of what we have studied. Like, minerals are naturally occurring substances having a definite chemical composition and recognizable physical properties, and they are classified into metals and non-metals. And then metals are also divided into ferrous and non-ferrous metals based on the iron content in them. And then minerals, non-metals are also divided into inorganic and inorganic minerals. And organic minerals are the fuel resources of the country, like coal, petroleum, natural gas, which are having organic content in them, or they are derived from organic remains of plants and animals. Now, non-organic minerals are those minerals which are not derived from organic matter, or they do not have organic remains in them. So like mica, diamond, these are non-metallic minerals. And then we have studied the important mineral belts of the country. One is the north-west belt, which is the Rajasthan and Gujarat Aravalli region. And this area is rich in those minerals which are used in building and construction industry. And Then we have the northeastern plateau area, which is very important mineral belt of the country, which is the Chota Nagpur plateau and the adjoining areas of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, MP, and these are famous for metallic minerals, non-metallic minerals like mica, also very famous here. And mostly ferrous minerals are mined over here, and this is also good reserves of coal, which is an energy resource. In this video program we have not dealt with fuel or energy resources. We are having a separate unit related to that, which we may take up some other time. And then we have also studied the southwestern mineral belt, which is the Karnataka, Goa region and uplands of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which are good reserves of lignite coal. Then iron ore reserves of Goa is important, and then monazite of Kerala is important. So we have studied all these mineral belts. We have studied the fourth mineral belt, which is the Himalayan, but we have studied that this is not very important in terms of extraction because of mountainous terrain. And then we came to a conclusion that peninsular India is rich in mineral resources, and so it is very important mineral belt. So all these northeastern plateau region, northwestern plateau region and the southwestern plateau region mineral belt comes into the peninsular India. Then we studied the distribution of some of the major metallic minerals, non-metallic minerals, and in case of metallic we bifurcated the ferrous and non-ferrous minerals. All the important minerals we have studied their distribution, utilization in terms of India, and the leading states related to the production of those minerals, and we have also studied their utility. Now, after studying the distribution and utilization of major minerals, we have studied the different mining methods, that is the underground method, surface mining, in situ mining and placer mining. And we have also dealt with the conservation aspects briefly in this video program. Now in the next video program we'll study about some other I've told you that energy resources are important, is important unit related to this, and it also forms a part of the discipline based elective, that is economic geography and geography of India. So after in the next video program we'll study about those resources, and till then keep watching. If you have any doubt you can write to us at satyaraj@ignou.ac.in. Till then keep watching our programs. We'll also try to get these uploaded on YouTube after a little bit of editing work, and thank you very much.
वतन ने मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी शान है। मेरे प्यारे वतन ने मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम। तेरे दामन से जो आए सबसे प्यारी सुबह तेरी, सबसे रंगी तेरी शाम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। माँ का दिल बन के कभी सीने से लग जाता है तू, माँ का दिल बन के कभी सीने से लग जाता है तू, और कभी नन्ही सी बेटी बन के याद आता है तू। जितना याद आता है मुझको, उतना तड़पाता है तू, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम, छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम। फिर भी है यही तमन्ना तेरे ज़र्रों की कसम, हम जहाँ पैदा हुए उस जगह ही निकले दम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। ऐ मेरे प्यारे वतन, ऐ मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान।
Hello learners, I welcome you to this very interesting session on the topic politics of translation. To address this issue, we have with us a renowned professor and director from the School of Humanities, Professor Rajendra
Translation
Prasad.
study.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
To assist him, we also have Dr. Chitresh Soni from the School of Translation Studies here at IGNOU headquarters. I am Anamika Shukla from the School of Humanities. Now, to begin with, Professor Pandey, if you would allow, I would love to understand and probably, try and understand how do you address the issue of the politics of translation? Or probably we can begin with what translation is all about and what are the various characteristic features that we need to be, conscious about when we deal with this idea of translation.
Thank you, Dr. Anamika Shukla. As you mentioned, I am dealing with the issues relating to translation as professor and director in the School of Translation Studies and Training, IGNOU. What we have been focusing on that translation is not merely inter-language transfer or cultural perspective. It deals with the politics of translation also. And translation is, in a sense, it is already a done deal. We will discuss later on at length why and how translation has made an intervention in the entire perspective of a prefixed interpretation, or in the sense that it is a prejudiced act or it is a done deal, it is prefixed cultural exchange. All these issues are pertinent to the perspective relating to translation. But before I address these issues, I think I would like to invite your attention and the attention of the learners that we are dealing with these issues particularly in perspective of course relating to MA in Translation Studies, that is simply known as Politics of Translation. So, in spite of the issues to be addressed and taken care of by the students of MA in Translation Studies, this is very relevant for those who are doing their research work and of course also those who are undertaking the course relating to PG Diploma in Translation Studies. Now come to the business, and that is relating to translation. What exactly is translation? Translation has priorly been understood, and even nowadays those who are not relating to the advanced studies of translation and particularly translation studies, they deal translation as inter-language exchange. But translation has come across far from that very idea, and that is now dealing with the issues relating to politics of translation. So particularly when this idea emerged, that idea emerged in an essay which was written by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, and that essay is known as Translation as Culture. And that essay was appeared in 2000 or so, and particularly that was relating to address the issues in consonance with the award prized and award that was to be given away by her. But since by the Sahitya Academy, since she could not attend that function, but she addressed that issue in a write-up. And that was the issue. I am just briefing the background.
Yeah, sure.
She suggested that translation is a done deal, and referring why she interpreted that translation was understood as translation means to carry across. Now translation is basically a variation of the Latin word transferre, and transferre means past participle of transfer, and that is a done deal. To quote her words, exactly what she suggested, translation is a done deal. But before we go to that extent, I think why we should address that issues. It is not that Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak who suggested this and we agreed upon in toto. Because if we go through the background relating to translation and translation pursuits, we find it out that during the colonial period, prior to that in India and abroad also, during the medieval period in India and even the ancient period, we have been witness to the facts that translation was a matter of interpretation by the rulers and ruled. How do you understand, how do we want to interpret. That was the perspective. In that broader perspective, you can find it out that in spite of the fact that she underlined the fact that it is a done deal, and that came for and from 2000 onwards, but we find the historical trace in the very early period, be it in Indian perspective, be it in Western perspective, like Plato's interpretation. A very good interpretation that is known as, you see, we are introduced with the fact that translation as interpretation, and that is known as, that is known as interpretation, and that emerged from Plato, Aristotle, and so on and so forth. So, but the fact of the matter is that what is written by Plato or Aristotle, that was interpreted in their own perspective. In one way we can call it appropriation, the other way we can find it out and we can trace it as politics of translation, particularly during the medieval period in India, with the particular reference that has been underlined as politics of translation, and a real interpretation was undertaken for the reference of colonial period, and colonial period translation was used as a tool for colonization. Thereafter it came as after independence, it is being used as tool of decolonization. These issues are to be addressed, but I think I have dealt at length.
Definitely.
The other issues will be
So
addressed
what
by
I
my
understand is, to begin with and to understand what translation is all about, as you mentioned and you quoted probably Gayatri Chakravarti, as she says that translation is a done deal, which means now it has already been done and you're going to carry across the matter. Now, it also means that there has to be an inter-language exchange. Now, the idea of or the issue of politics of translation comes into existence when we talk about a particular text that is being translated from, say, language A to language B. Now, we also need to keep in mind the various perspectives when we are dealing with the idea of translation. We also need to emphasize the various socio-cultural and also the political issues, because we have to keep in mind when we are translating a particular text, now it has to be interpreted by people belonging to different social backgrounds, to different cultural backgrounds, and probably there is, where the idea of adaptation peeps in. So, Dr. Chitresh, my next question is from you. How do you address this idea of adaptations while dealing with translation?
Okay, thank you so much for this very nice question. When you say translation and when you say politics of translations, so either it can be adaptation or it can be translation or any other form of translation.
Perfect.
So the word politics comes into fore, and its meaning is like that that a particular text is translated in a particular way, and each and every person, many theoreticians of translation have translation theory, many scholars of translation theory have emphasized on this fact that each and every time when the translator jumps into the text,
Right.
so he decides to do a translation, this text he intends to twist that the text, the original text, into one way or the another. So some scholars of translation theory say that the translator must jump in, and he or she should translate or adapt that text according to his or her world knowledge and his or her experience. But this cannot be in the case of some domains of translation. Suppose you take scriptures, or you take some documents which are whose sanctity is needed to be very correct. Sometimes you need to translate or translate constitution of a country.
Correct.
Suppose constitution of India. So you want to translate in all the 22 languages. So what can the translator do? Can he or she jump in or apply his mind more than it is needed or not? Because in the cases of this legal documents, or in the cases of scriptures, we have seen it is sometimes it is a controversial topic, and this in the context of scriptures, Latin, the New Testament or Bible was in Latin, and for a major period of time in the history it was not allowed to be translated, or it was translated as per some people wanted, and afterwards King James Bible came in. Same in the case of Sanskrit also. In Sanskrit also, first as it comes to my mind that Panchatantra was translated into Pahlavi in, I think, 1st or 2nd century. Professor Pandey must be knowing better than me. So when you translate scriptures, so either you do its adaptation, just like the adaptation of you see the adaptation of Ramayana. It is adapted into many Indian languages, and it is adapted into different terms. So if it is done without a malified intent, it adds to the diversity of the text, and it adds to the diversity of to the cultural memory of the country. But if it is done by some malified intent, or something interpolation is there, some twisting, omission and commission acts are there, it becomes controversial, and more so in the language of religions and scriptures.
Yeah, so we've come to a very interesting point, as Dr. Chitresh suggested. When it comes to translation, there are certain things that we need to address. Now, how do we retain the objective of the text, or I should say the objectivity of the text, while we are dealing with the process of translation? Because once you become subjective, which means that your cultural biases, your social biases are going to engulf, you're going to intertwine them with the content of the text. So what I'm trying to understand is, how can you, with the idea of, while addressing this politics of translation, also remain and retain the sanctity of any text, be it religious, be it social, be it political, or a personal memoir? How do you retain the sanctity of the text and also at the same time remain objective? Because we as human beings have a tendency of framing biases. So how do you kind of refrain from being subjective and also try and retain the objectivity of the particular text? Professor Pandey, would you like to comment?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
See, there are 3-4 aspects what you dealt with. So I would like to come across all those aspects in a very short way. First one is that no translation can be translation or transfer of meaning or message from one language to the other in toto. No translation can be executed in 100% delivery mode. Why? Because see, the two language pairs, I mean a language pair cannot have the same identities relating to characteristics or specific features of languages.
Right.
Two languages are different. So if something is transferred from one language to the other, it has to be vary. What is the variation? It depends upon the interpretation. There is a theory called hermeneutic motion of translation, and how do you address this? Hermeneutic, in broader sense, it is interpretation. So every translator interprets whether it is textual manner or the cultural perspective. So again we come across the theory relating to transfer linguistic perspective of translation and then the cultural aspects of translation. Now we address the issues since after 1978 or so, 75 rather. Prior to that, to be more specific, in 1972 the word was coined, that is translation studies, and now that has come to know to be known as a discipline of studies. Thereafter, any act of translation is not treated as linguistic transfer. So if it is not a linguistic transfer, then there is a component that is relating to culture, the other component is relating to politics of translation, there is a pretext, and so on and so forth. So to address this issue, actually in 1990s, Andre Lefebvre edited a book that is called Translation Studies, History, Translation and Culture. Translation Studies, History and Culture. And under that book, in his preface, and that was jointly written by Lefebvre and Susan Bassnett, so he underlined the fact that there is no, unit, operational unit. He can't use the term operational unit.
Right.
So he suggested that operational unit of translation is neither word nor text, operational unit of nor even sentence, neither word nor sentence nor even text. The operational unit of translation is culture. So if we address this issue in this perspective, we find it out that no text can be translated without the fact that their cultural nuances are addressed. And moreover, I come across the fact that an article which was written in as early, I think 100 years ago, I am addressing 1823, Walter Benjamin wrote Task of Translator, and wherein he finds it out before these propositions made by the thinkers. In that essay, he addresses why the translation is to be, what is the objective of translation. Translation is not meant for those who can understand the original. This is what he addresses.
Right.
So those who can read the original, that is not the task of translator to address those issues. So any translation has to be addressed to the target readers. If target reader is different, then of course one has to adopt this strategy, taking into consideration the nuances and various perspectives relating to the target audience. Like that is called as foreignization, localization, globalization, different perspective strategies that is relating to translation. In this broader perspective, no act of translation is unconcerned with the politics of translation. Politics has to be there. What amount of politics is there? It is to be understood. If it is directed by the ruler, then the 100% amount is involved. If it is the creativity of translator, then it is known as transcreation. If it is creativity more involved by the translator, then it is known as rewriting. And I am not going into details of those theories which were propounded by different thinkers. But of course, this perspective has to be taken into account, and especially the colonial perspective of translation was prefixed, and that was prefixed since after 1780 or so, when 1777 or so, when William Jones came into India as Supreme Court judge, that was established in Kolkata. Thereafter, what he did, we will go into that. And of course, in the medieval period also, the Darashiko's translation was one notion of translation. Then Kashmiri school of translation was there. Thereafter, Baghdadi school of translation was there. All these schools were involved into politics of translation, whether prefixed or postfixed, in good manner, or in prejudiced manner with preconceived notion, in positive sense or in negative sense, but they did have their own intention.
Right, sir. So what I understand, what my take from your, understanding of the politics of translation is that, as we say, translation as culture. So we are trying to interpret translation, or any kind of text that is being translated has to go through the cultural biases. We cannot keep ourselves detached from the socio-cultural scenario of the particular place where this translation is being held or taking place. As you mentioned that, the unit of translation is not a word, not a sentence, rather it is culture. So which means that culture definitely plays an important role while dealing with the process of translation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, as we move ahead, Dr. Chitresh, how do you think when we talk about this culture and the entire game of translation, or I should say the politics of translation, when we deal in the translation of the intellectual tradition, I should say the Indian intellectual tradition and the translation?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, what is your take on that?
So first I would like to dissect this word translation.
Perfect.
So, or in the context of India's intellectual tradition. So the translation of the word translation is anuvad
Right.
in Hindi.
Ji.
And first of all, the Panini's Ashtadhyayi mentions a sutra named Anuvade Charanani. So there is a sutra. So if we dissect this word, anuvad, anu means it has two components, anu and vad. Vad means isms and anu means which follows. So if we go to a very means root meaning, so it is an ism which follows. So where does the ism comes into effect? Where there is politics. So in politics only. So if you go back to Panini, so even Panini was a very smart guy. He understood that if you repeat the statement, for example, he afterwards in the what Professor Pandey mentioned, the hermeneutics of translation. So hermeneutics is very important, and
Right.
in Indian tradition, Mimamsa philosophy is there, or it is called Purva Mimamsa. So this philosophy, it is one of the this 9 basic schools of Indian philosophy. So it deals with the hermeneutics or interpretation. So if a text is interpreted or translated in a particular manner rightly or not. So it is, if it is rightly translated, the Mimamsa theory examines that text, that it is rightly translated or not. So if hermeneutics comes into place and if hermeneutics is applied properly, I am of the view that this harmony also follows the hermeneutics. So if the hermeneutics of translation is taken care of, then a harmonious translation will be the finished or final product that will you get. So in the case of this Panini, I go back to Panini. So
Right.
he told anuvad. So anuvad in his India's intellectual tradition, anuvad means a punarukti, a statement which is spoken of again. For example, if we go to this Indian text, there is a nice example of this. That example is Agnir Himasya Bheshajam. Agni means fire, him means ice, and Bheshajam means is medicine. Agni हिम की औषधि है अथवा हिम का वो एंटीडोट है
Right.
एक तरह से. सो दिस नॉलेज इज ऑलरेडी नोन टू द वर्ल्ड. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर स्टेटमेंट इज नोन एज अनुवाद बिकॉज what is being stated is being already known to the world and to the society. And if we go to further into the, if we move forward into the history and to the modern history, what Professor Pandey suggested, various schools, Professor Pandey mentioned that of translation, and it is there was also a big school and big industry which came into play in the colonial period when British were dominant power in India. There was a very large industry. With the help of Indian scholars, they translated many texts. The Sacred Book of the East series by Max Muller, and recently in Americas there is a Clay Sanskrit library in which many of the texts of Indian intellectual traditions such as Ramayana and Mahabharata are translated and transliterated with introductions and with their commentaries. Sometimes they are to the point and sometimes they involve these isms and this politics of translation, and you can read all these texts. They are available, and learners can go to the libraries, and they can also study the translation of Vedas by, just for example, the translation of Samveda by Griffith, and other translation by Max Muller. There is a 80 book series. So it should be, this is high time that this text should be critically examined. and this work is need to be done, and more so the scholars or the students working in this area of politics of translation, if they want to go, they should read to go into this subject deeper, they should read the minutes of Macaulay, and they should study the translations which were done, or which were the texts which were translated during this British era. They should go, they should study that, and including the books. There are many other books. I have just mentioned 1 or 2 or 3 series, so we can look after them. So I think Professor Pandey will be commenting more on that.
Yeah.
I think due to paucity of time, we don't have much time, but I would like to readdress those things which are stated by Dr. Chitresh.
Yes, sir.
Actually, we have earlier trace than Panini, and since after Rig Veda itself, there is use of the term Anuvad, and that state reinterpretation. Anukathan. Vad dhatu, that is relating to Vad dhatu, and Vad means speaking. So Anuvad is relating to speaking.
To speak.
To speak, to address, to talk. And this is after it is spoken by the speaker, the one who follows it, it is the fact that is known as Anuvad. And as far as this interpretation is concerned, the scholars of translation, particularly those who are dealing the issues, I'm just going to wind it up. Those who are dealing the issues relating to post-colonial translation, particularly Susan Bassnett and Harish Trivedi, they underline the fact that the colonial history of translation has been shameful history of translation, because that was relating to rulers' perspective, and now it needs to be decolonized and reinterpretation is required to be undertaken. But I think because of this shortage of time, paucity of time, I think we should go ahead to conclude.
Yeah, that would be very nice. So, the final take I would say is अनुवाद, जैसा कि चित्रेश जी ने कहा, इसे हम पुनरोक्ति, या प्रोफेसर पांडे ने हमें बताया कि इसे हम अनुकथन, so something which is reinterpreted, which is spoken again, which is again and again retold, but the final product should definitely be in harmony with the original material or the original content. So thank you, Professor Pandey and Dr. Chitresh. It definitely has been a very interesting and thought-provoking session. Our viewers and listeners definitely must have been benefited with this. Thank you, and we shall definitely continue the discussion in the more sessions to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.